Welcome, everybody. Sorry for the delay. A little bit of housekeeping organization. I'm getting that in. All right, everybody. So, thank you. Sorry for the delay. I did start Caitlin, if you can check live stream. So, if you're joining us for the first time, typically we start on time. I am 3 minutes late. That is one of my pet peeves. I hate being late, but sometimes life happens. So, again, I apologize, but I appreciate your patience. Um, we wanted a topic that was something a little bit, you know. I've run across some people recently, and whether they've lost a job unintentionally, intentionally, changed careers, maybe thinking up re-entering the workforce, maybe just as life has it, they're being forced to. So, we've been able to guide clients in the past through this when this happens. So it's not always just, hey, although we're experts and like to help folks segue and transfer and work through retirement, right? So that's the goal. But what happens if life throws you a curveball? Or you find yourself in a position that, life has changed, circumstances have changed. So what's your plan? So what I wanted to do today is take us through just sort of a thoughtful approach and regardless of why you might be looking for a job, so can you do the job today? So gaps matter less when confidence is clear. And so what we're saying here is, look, if I'm going to interview somebody. And there are questions that may or may not get asked. And one of the first thoughts would be on my mind is, can you do the job? And can you do the job today? And it's a lot of us as we age, right? Things that we might have been able to do when we were younger, maybe we're prohibited from, right? We're not really thinking about, hey, I might change my career. And I know it's really something that's close and dear to my heart is my father. I do believe that my dad, who had a master's in chemistry, he was my hero. He had worked at Coca-Cola and was part of R&D and research and development, and then he changed careers and he went to a company in Cranford. And he was part of their, oversight of product development. And, they made Pam for the spray-on coatings for cookware, and they made Airwick, which you would plug into the walls. And at the time, I didn't really understand until he was let go. Right, he was let go because they were doing corporate tiring, downsizing. But what I still recall is that he was making X. And when they hired somebody, they hired a college student and paid that person half of what they were paying him. And that's reality, right? So, I've always been sort of sensitive when somebody is forced into a job change, whether design or just because the company I think corporations, you've heard me say this before, the days of rewarding employees for 30 years of loyal services, unless you work for the federal government and have some type of pension, I think those days are gone. Right. So, if I were to interview somebody, can you do the job today? Will you show up consistently? And are you easy to work with? And again, the reason my dad popped into my mind was because if they're paying maybe a higher wage than they could pay somebody a new startup. But let's say that we were in a warehouse and we have heavy boxes to lift, and maybe you're out of shape, and I mean, these are thoughts that employers are going to have. So you have to go into that. And what we're trying to say here is that if you apply for a job or start to approach the workforce, be in a position where confidence is something that you want to demonstrate. And so that's why I took a little bit of time. And then, as you're starting to approach your search, you're thinking about hey, I want to be in this field, or maybe it's a career change, maybe it's a brand new field that you're not as familiar with. I do think you need to start with, so tell me, why did you leave your last job? How long have you been away from the workforce? And again, the shorter the gap, the less you have to worry about it. But if there is some gaps, maybe you had to take care of grandchildren or children or an ailing parent or grandparent, right? Anything as long as it flows naturally. And then, things like your resume and LinkedIn, you need to get current. You're going to hear me talk about AI today. And I think that, that may be one of the reasons why you've lost your job. I mean, corporations and companies are looking to cut costs. They're looking to downsize and save for the bottom line. And so if that's the case, don't be afraid of AI or be angry at AI or be intimidated by AI, but you should be embracing it and using it to help you to come up with a plan to be able to present yourself in a competitive manner. Relationships, right? I think that, I just met with somebody the other day and I asked her for a resume and, and I will share and I know people and I don't know everybody in every industry, but I am going to make and try and help you as best as I can. Contract, consulting, part-time, temp or perm. So what is it that you're going to be doing and how did that differ? One of the things I think that's hard as human beings, let's say that you're making X and a lot of our sort of self-worth or value or how we see ourselves is really strictly tied to the work that we've performed or have done over a period of time. I mean, it's just normal, right? I know for my dad it was. And, when things change, and if you have to change, we may sometimes find ourselves in a new role. And so staying abreast of that. And then the skills, you have to have show evidence or be able to provide a sincere sort of solidify that you have the skill sets. And one of the things that I share, um, I study every day, something, somehow, some way, some shape or form, because there's so much information out there in all aspects. You think about financial planning and all the elements that there are in it. So, I'm a human being too, and the only thing that works for me is staying current and studying so that when I hear things, I can internalize it and then be able to regurgitate it or share it back in a way that's understandable. Budget, healthcare, calm decisions, right? So you have to make sure that you're in a position that you're not panicked when applying for a job. And then a bias plan, lead with energy and flexibility. So we'll get into that. So fix your story before you apply anywhere. Why you left, what you've been doing, and why you're returning now. Modernize your resume and LinkedIn immediately. If you go to mine, I still think mine needs to be updated on LinkedIn. I was just looking at something the other day and I said, yeah, I want to tweak that language. And that's me, and I'm sitting here giving the advice. But I look quite often and I'll see either an advisor reach out to me or somebody and I'll check them out and there's nothing. And so, as an employer in a world of information, that's what we're looking for. So think of that LinkedIn especially as a billboard. Sort of, you have to start to reinvent yourself or be out there and lean into it to feel like, hey, this is my skill set. And then reach out to the people that you know and ask for endorsements in areas that you've provided services for before. Um, avoid, I like this one because, it says avoid outdated signals. I can tell you, I still have an AOL account. I would never send a resume from my AOL account. So just be aware of that as well. Network before you apply. I hugely recommend networking, and the reason is I used to belong to both Latip and BNI for years. And it really gave me not only, as I was building my business, but I was learning about other people's businesses and what they were doing and what worked. But these networking events were actually a lot of fun. They were demanding, right? Because it's hard to show up every week at 7 a.m. And that's a 30-minute drive to get there from where I was at. But I did it religiously for years. And you know what? I landed on my feet. And I think that hard work, I saw a lot of people come through the doors, some people that didn't really buy into that. And it's not for everybody. I'm not saying this is the only thing you can do. But there is absolutely, doing Rotary, doing these things. I've participated in a lot of it, but what my advice is, do what other people are not willing to do to set yourself apart, right? If we fall into a period where, again, if we start to have a contraction, or if there's mass layoffs, or AI starts to spike, and what happened to my father starts to happen on a more regular basis, being prepared now for that is what I would suggest. And the way that you do that is by practicing this stuff now. So I strongly encourage that as well. So bridge jobs and skill refreshers and can accelerate the return. So contract, consulting, part-time, temp to perm, project work, growth role. One of the things I'll do when I have a client that's segue into retirement, one of the first two pieces of advice I typically will give almost every time. A, if you have a house, go get a home equity line of credit before you leave your job. Because banks don't lend money to people that need money. Banks lend money to people that know demonstrate the ability to repay a loan, and that is a current salary work job cash inflow. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is as you're turning around and you're thinking about doing something, if you left, let's say I had a client that left the defense industry, go set up an LLC, and and maybe how you name it, and they're really relatively easy to do. But having that corporation will allow you to, A, if you need some tax deductions in the future, you have it, you can expense out. And B, having that seasoned a little bit. I have a client right now that actually had set it up 5 years ago. And now, just now, is starting to tap into it and following the strategies that we talked about because of exactly what I'm talking about, where they're trying to flip some real estate, and we have some potential huge tax hits if we do that. Having the LLC in place for a tax perspective was very helpful. So that's also something I would recommend. Get financially organized and prepared for age bias. That's what I was sharing with about my dad. It's there. They can't do it. They're not allowed to do it. They'll call it anything but. But let's be honest, one person was let go and another person was hired, right? So at the end of the day, we have to say to ourselves, do you want to be the person that is able to either A, land on their feet, or the person that's saying, hey, listen, you know what? It is hard, right? It's an emotional, tough point in our life. If you're let go at a point when you were not ready, right? So, like I said, my dad died at 50, right? He was let go at 49, right? So you think about that. It maybe you're a little bit older and you're waiting on Social Security, and and again, forget about Security claiming strategies age 62 or 65, 67. You get let go at 58, and you're like, hey, listen, can I pay the bills? What do I do? Where do I go? And so that's what we're saying is being prepared. This is a preparation as a Boy Scout, being prepared. I would strongly encourage is that you don't wait for Chicken Little to come by and go, the sky is falling. That if that were to happen, going to unemployment is never fun, right? So we have to go through that process and get some type of income for the maximum amount of time that you're allowed. In the meantime, actively looking for work. You don't want to wait until the axe falls or the shoe drops to be able to say, hey, now I'll start to be ready. You want to be like, hey, listen, it sucked, let's be honest. It sucked that it happened. But now I was semi prepared for it. My resume was somewhat updated. My LinkedIn I had in the background ready to go should this happen. I created the LLC. I'm ready. I've got a good budget so I can make it for a period of time. This is all important. And then this is one where, the 401ks, I can tell you that almost every single client that I meet with has an old 401k from elsewhere somewhere. And a lot of the advice is that, oh, your current employer, roll over your old 401k into mine. And I just have learned in my career, that rolling money from one 401k to another really limits your options. We are more of a fan of rolling a 401k into an IRA. But regardless of whether it's a 401k or an IRA, tapping into that early is really a huge and really to be avoided at all costs, right? If you're tapping into your retirement accounts to fill this emergency right now, A, the government doesn't allow you to put the money back. B, depending on your age, could have a 10% penalty, right? And then C, you're spending the money that you spent the last 10, 20, 30 years to build up that's got to last you for the next 10, 20, 30 years. It is absolutely the last the last resort that I would ever recommend. Hey, if you got to do it and you have zero other choice, then you got to do what you got to do. But then we got bigger problems, which is how do we manage the next 10, 20, 30 years of sleeping indoors? So again, that was just really just a tidbit. If you're in New Jersey, New York City, right, there are a lot of strong sectors that right now are currently, healthcare, logistics, pharma, finance, and insurance are all pretty prevalent and service oriented in this area. One of the areas that, again, my background in the Navy, that's where I learned my mechanical engineering. I was a welder, a pipe fitter, sheet metal fabricator, damage controlman, fireman. I learned all that stuff. I also learned I didn't like getting filthy dirty. But the trades are such an area that, I think are under explored. And really, they can really, if you can help people to solve problems that they have. So if I was sitting here and I was put into a position where I had to do something now at 61, I could tell you I would cut grass. I would create a pool building company. I would create a pool servicing company. I would create a weeding company. You can get a lawn. There are so many options that you could do that really a little bit more manual, depending on your health. But also remember, working outside in the winter sucks, right? So as we're thinking about things and we want to reinvent ourselves or maybe think of other careers or alternatives, starting while you have a job, I think is really, really critically important. So again, this was really intended just to share some thoughts or insights, and then again, if we can answer any questions, should this ever happen to you, it's not our first rodeo. We're happy to share our experiences. Let us know. So your week, this is your roadmap, your game plan. View unemployment just like you would at work. You should have activities to do every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Do something and be consistent. And repetition is key to success, in my opinion. Do apply consistently, reconnect personally, follow up professionally, keep structured. Don't mass apply blindly, isolate, dwell on rejection, or bash former employers. So you do not need to convince employers you are perfect. That's the other thing, right? Leave perfection, at the door, right? Let people know you're human. Be personable. Be friendly. Be somebody that you would want to work with around you. And I think all these things will help you to secure that. These are our disclosures, folks. I want to thank you. Sorry about the little bit of the hiccup there, but we worked through it. And again, if you have anything, any questions, anything that we can do, reach out to us. Happy to share with you and help you. I feel honestly, my calling, our calling in professional planning services, now Simplicity Wealth Advisors. We are trying to go out there and help the community to make it through some very complicated areas. So again, everybody have a great day. Look forward to seeing you and stay well.